What's up everyone, it's Q from Retro Q Gaming, and today is, yes, that amazing day when all the planets have aligned, the craziest stuff has happened, the Ark of the Covenant has opened, and Nintendo have officially announced the Super Nintendo Classic, or the SNES Mini, or whatever you want to call it. It's finally official. Nintendo of America have officially revealed the worst kept secret of 2017 after a massive, incredible demand and success in some aspects. Obviously, there was a bit of a manufacturing quantity failing issue when it came to the NES Classic or the NES Mini of the holiday season of 2016. It's obvious that they wanted to go with that route, and because the Super Nintendo is arguably bigger and better in every way than the NES, cue a bunch of actual NES fanboys beating the comment section at me right now, but it doesn't matter because Nintendo have officially announced the Super Nintendo Classic. I can't wait for this. It's going to be absolutely amazing. Now, to quickly go over some of the details, because there's a couple of things worth noting when it comes to this. So, the NES, yes, that's right, the NES Classic launched at, I believe it was $60. I think it was $60 back last November and included 30 games and one controller. Now, here's what is going to work a little bit different, because this is only confirmed for America right now. I've been checking out all the European sources, all Nintendo UK, Nintendo of Europe and things like that. Still nowhere to be found on the European side of it. But the SNES Classic is going to retail for $80, come with 21 games, which is 9 games less, and actually going to come with 2 controllers. Of course, it'll work with the Wii Classic controller, the Virtual Console controllers, the Pro controllers, whatever you want to call them. It will work with all those as usual. But the key thing to note is it is a little bit more expensive, comes with 9 games less, and comes bundled with 2 controllers, as opposed to the NES, which launched a bit cheaper, had 30 games, and it only included 1 controller, with second ones being sold separately. So, there's one big thing I want to talk about on this list as well. I'm going to go through the list of games, but there's one big thing I want to talk about, as well as just some other cool stuff on there too. So, first off, the fact that we only have 21 games is a little bit of a bummer. I can kind of understand it because of licensing issues and things like that. Super Nintendo has such an absolutely wide and amazing variety of games that realistically, they should have sold this for like maybe $100 or €100 and put maybe 50 games on it if they could. Now, I realize that might be a bit optimistic for what they could actually achieve, but it's just, there's so many games on Super Nintendo that to get the whole thing in there would have cost more and required more games. But they still have a pretty good lineup anyway. We'll go through all of which right now. So, the list of games as they're known at the moment, this could obviously change, but I really doubt it. Contra 3, the Alien Wars, so it makes sense they put in a side-scrolling shooter from Contra. Hell, they put in Super C on the classic NES. Donkey Kong Country 1, one of the greatest platformer games of all time. Obviously, it would have been nice to have the trilogy in there, but of course, they're only going to want to put one game in just to kind of, I mean, realistically, that would bump the game up to 23, and it would probably cost a little bit more for licensing and whatever. So, Donkey Kong Country 1 puts in a nice, good sample. Earthbound, a huge role-playing game, very quirky. Obviously, it's pretty iconic in this day and age as well. Final Fantasy 3, aka Final Fantasy 6, one of the greatest Final Fantasy games ever made. It's tied for my personal best Final Fantasy between 4 and 6, or that would be 2 and 3 if you're American. So, naturally, they're covering their JRPG front here as well. F-Zero, it's a great first-party game, shows off the Mode 7 graphics, which were always really, really nice, not to mention a badass soundtrack, and includes a racing game in there too. Kirby Superstar, not 100% familiar with the Kirby games on the Super Nintendo. I never really got into Kirby, to be honest, until recently, I'll admit, because I only ever really got into Kirby, I'd say, more when I actually played it on the NES Classic, and I was never really big into the Kirby games back then. But you've got Kirby Superstar, which I'm assuming is a platformer game, Kirby's Dream Course, which I believe is a golf game, Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, the best Zelda game ever made if you ask me, and naturally a perfect fit for this, because you need a Zelda game. Mega Man X, also one of the best platformer slash 2D side-scrolling shooters, like you call it. One of the best ones on there, Mega Man X, and also a great entry from Capcom when they properly still treated Mega Man with respect. Secret of Mana, Squaresoft's classic, one of their most amazing games of all time, and my personal favorite game of all time across every platform ever made. So naturally, I'm hyped about that. I'm currently playing the Secret of Mana collection on my Nintendo Switch. I'm playing Secret of Mana as it is. Hell, you're seeing it right now, so you get a perfect point on there. Star Fox, one of the first proper console games to use 3D graphics. Yes, that's right, the Super Nintendo was capable of limited 3D, thanks in part to the Super FX chip, and it was a pretty good game. It's the birth of Star Fox, and we all know how Star Fox has gone from there. We don't like to talk about that Wii U game. Anyway, moving on, here's the big one, the big extra thing I wanted to talk about as well. Star Fox 2. This game, Star Fox 2, was allegedly extremely near completion or completed back in the day, but never finally released. Now, the fact that this is finally going to officially be released is, after all these years, basically mind-blowing. So I cannot wait to play Star Fox 2 for the first time. Street Fighter 2 Turbo Hyper Fighting. Now, of course, it's Street Fighter. It's really strange because of the naming conventions of Street Fighter and all that as well. If I recall correctly, Street Fighter 2 Turbo Hyper Fighting Edition is my personal favorite version of Street Fighter 2. I'd have to double check with the version I have, because I know the one I have is the Hyper Fighting Edition. I just don't remember if it includes Turbo on there as well, because it's, you know, there's Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Super Street Fighter 2. It's crazy. So again, it is a good version of Street Fighter, as long as it's not the Turbo, you know, with the super bars and all that crap. But it's Street Fighter. It's what people know from the Super Nintendo. Super Castlevania, again, back when Konami made great games. Yes, that's right, Konami used to make games. Not only did they used to make games, they used to make good games, which is also crazy. And Super Castlevania 4, one of the best side-scrolling platformer games on the Super Nintendo, joins the likes of Donkey Kong Country, Mega Man X, two games we're already seeing on this actual console, this mini plug-and-play system. Super Ghouls and Ghosts, again, another Capcom classic in this one. Game is rock hard, hard as nails, immense fun if you can manage to get through it and not tear your hair out. You may hear me kind of stumbling a little bit here. I'm just really fucking excited for this. Super Mario Kart, probably the best, I won't call it racing series because I don't like to consider Mario Kart racing, as strange as that might sound. But Super Mario Kart, the game that started the Mario Kart series, one of my favorite entries in the entire series, arguably the best between Super Mario Kart and Mario Kart 8, because Jesus, Mario Kart 8 is so good. But almost every game in the Mario Kart series is amazing as it is. Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars, a game that has mass critical acclaim to still this day, and has never officially, properly at least in some ways, been released here in Europe. Now, yes, I realize that it has been released on the European Virtual Console in the more recent years, but never actually released back in the day. Turn-based Mario RPG actually worked in partnership with Nintendo and Squaresoft back in their golden days, back in the Squaresoft golden days, when you had games like Chrono Trigger and things like that, and you had a collaboration with Nintendo on that. And of course it led to Super Mario RPG, a game that, I've already said it, has mass critical acclaim and cult following to this day. Super Mario World, what is there to say about Super Mario World? It's one of the greatest platformer games of all time, joins the likes of Mega Man X, Donkey Kong Country, Super Castlevania 4. Obviously, the Super Nintendo was the best way, and personally, Super Mario World is my favorite platformer, or my favorite Mario platformer, my favorite 2D Mario platformer. Most people will hate on me for saying, oh, you can't like that over Mario 1, you can't like that over Mario 3. I do, sue me, it is what it is. So Super Metroid, of course this game was going to be on a Super Metroid, one of the most atmospheric games to ever fit on a Super Nintendo cartridge. Great game, great exploration. Not a Metroidvania game because it predates the whole Metroid or the Castlevania that used that by 3 years, so you can't call it that. Great game. Super Punch-Out, possibly one of the only two boxing games I actually like. The other one being boxing in Wii Sports. But the point is, Super Punch-Out is just, it's an immensely fun game. It was also great because way back then you'd never see Irish characters in games, so it was a big deal. There's 2 Irish characters, 2 brothers in Super Punch-Out. Definitely a great addition. Yoshi's Island, which is basically Super Mario World 2, really, where it's in a very different style. It uses a kind of a hand-drawn art style versus the 16-bit pixel art, we'll call it, of Super Mario World, but it brings in a couple of new fun mechanics. One awesome, did I say awesome? I meant to say absolutely awful mechanic that everyone hates, and that is the crying baby Mario. So, that's the list of games. Yes, it's a brilliant list. Of course, we would have liked to see more. We would have liked to see 30 games. We would have liked to see 50 games. We would have loved to see some more stuff on there. We would have loved to see Donkey Kong Country 2, Donkey Kong Country 3, maybe Final Fantasy 4 at the same time. We would have liked to see, in a perfect world, a translated version of Secret of Mana 2, but that probably never happened. We'd love to see Mega Man X2. We'd love to see Mega Man X3. We'd love to see, God, what else is there on there too? Chrono Trigger. You get my point. There's so much we'd love to see on there. The point is, I have skipped over one important thing, and that is the release date. So this is going to release on the 29th of September 2017, just before the Christmas rush actually starts. How are Nintendo going to handle this? Are they going to actually manage to produce enough units? Because we all know the NES Classic, you'd have to sell your left bollock to actually manage to get one. How I managed to get one? I had an in with the guys at GameStop, and luckily I was the second person to was it the first or second? I can't remember if I was the first or second person to pre-order in my local GameStop, so I was pretty lucky with that one. I'm going down first thing in the morning to try do this. Again, it hasn't been announced for Europe at the moment, but I'm still going to try basically every day because I have to get one of these. I absolutely must get one of these. Now, it brings me to one last final point before I work my way off this video. As it stands at the moment, because this is only announced so far for America, obviously the American version is going to have that horrible looking American Super Nintendo. You know, the one that looks like a big box tank with the 2 different tones of grey and the horrible purple and all that everywhere, as well as the controllers with the 2-tone purple buttons. Now, if this comes to Europe, are we going to see the same game lineup? We know that previously on the NES Classic and the NES Mini, when you compared the American and European games to the Famicom Mini and the Famicom Classic, there was a slight variation in games. Now, what I'm wondering is, one, will there be a slight variation in games between possibly a Super Famicom Mini or a European Super Nintendo Mini? Because don't forget, we have a couple of games, or at least I can think of one off the top of my head real quick, that was a relatively high profile game that was never released over in America, and that game is Terranigma, which of course to this day can easily just be, I mean nowadays they could really just easily put it on a flash game in the sense of a Super Nintendo Classic and just release it anywhere. But the point is there going to be a game list difference between the European, between the American, and between the potential Super Famicom? And the last final part, which also ties into that, if they do release it, well, of course they're going to release it here in Europe, I hope we get the gorgeous looking European Super Nintendo version. If you aren't familiar with it, it's the same as the Super Famicom. So the European Super Nintendo and the Japanese Super Famicom look the same. They don't look anything at all like that horrible American version that you guys have. The big box purple tank thing doesn't look like that. So I can't wait to see how it is. I'm super hyped for this. I can't wait. I don't even know what to say. What do you think? Is your hype in overload? Are you going to try murder scalpers to get one? What's the deal? Are you going to be queuing up for like 6 months in advance? Are you going to be checking every day if you can pre-order? Let me know all of that stuff. Let me know, because as a massive Super Nintendo fan, I need to know this, and it's driving me absolutely crazy because I'm going to be going nuts for a few more months now. Let me know all that in the comment section below. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the rest of the videos in my channel.